Greetings and welcome to KSOL Black Talk Radio, the new black media. Well, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell on Tuesday said that he does not support reparations for descendants of slaves, a topic that has become a point of debate in the 2020 election cycle. Well, first off, before I even continue, let me just state for the record that I think this is very cowardly and very irresponsible of white males continuing the discussion of reparations without black men and women present at the table discussing this important issue coming up in the 2020 election cycle. This is important to traditional American blacks, the descendants of slaves. American descendants of slaves, that is. We deserve the right and the voice to be at the tables instead of watching old white men like you, Mitch McConnell, sitting there pointing your fingers and talking about this discussion when really we should be the ones talking and you should be the ones listening. But I digress. Mitch McConnell goes to say, quote, "I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago, for whom none of us currently living are responsible, is a good idea," McConnell said. "We've tried to deal with our original sin of slavery by fighting a civil war, by passing landmark civil rights legislation. We elected an African-American president," unquote. Well, first of all, Mitch McConnell, let it be known that all those things that you described, black people were front and center regarding those issues. Black people were present regarding all of those issues. Our first elected black president was elected by black, traditional black Americans, the American descendants of slaves. You remember that. Quit taking all the credit for things that you were not solely responsible for. So McConnell was asked about reparations during a weekly press conference, which comes a day before the House Judiciary Committee will hold the first hearing on the issue in a decade. Quote, "I think we're always a work in progress in this country, but no one currently alive was responsible for that, and I don't think we should be trying to figure out how to compensate for it." Well, of course you would say something like that because you're a racist and you live off of white privilege. You don't want that jeopardized at all. Let's be 100% truthful and let's be 100% real. He goes on to say, first of all, it would be pretty hard to figure out who to compensate. No, it's not. You had no problems compensating and figuring out who the Jews were, or the Native Americans, or the Japanese for the internment camps. You had no problems figuring that out. You always seem to have problems figuring out anything when it deals with American blacks, the American descendants of slaves, that white America, this country, this government is solely responsible for. You cannot change those truths. He says, "No, I don't think reparations are a good idea," McConnell continued. Well, of course, white media will let you put that out there in the universe because white media is an apparatus of white supremacy in this country. Because if they were right and fair and honest like they claim, they would have black people front and center in this conversation along with you. And you wouldn't be sitting there pointing your fingers trying to tell anyone about anything that you shouldn't be doing in the first place. But I digress. The House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights and Civil Liberties is holding the hearing Wednesday, quote, to examine through open and constructive discourse the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade, its continuing impact on the community, and the path to restorative justice. Now, as I just read those words, I was thinking about Mitch McConnell the whole time, thinking how this is a man who is old in America, 9 times out of 10 someone who is racist and for sure benefiting off of white privilege, that he would sit there and talk about the negatives of reparations and figuring out how to carry out the path to restorative justice. Even though I just read those words, I can't picture Mitch McConnell a part of that discussion at all. When you have men like, and I use that term loosely, but when you have people like Mitch McConnell speaking like this, and he's supposed to be an intelligent human being in the 21st century, you would think that he would be open-minded and say more constructive things instead of insulting and offending the millions of traditional American blacks, i.e. American descendants of slaves. Shameful of you, Mitch McConnell. I'll never forget this. But let me continue. It says Rep. Sheila Jackson Lee reintroduced legislation that was initially spearheaded by former Rep. John Connors Jr. that calls for a study on reparations. Well, let me just stop for a second there, because I've heard other YouTubers bring this up about how there were others besides John Conyers, and not only that, but where did the study go from the John Conyers and Sheila Jackson Lee? Absolutely nowhere. They've been sitting on the back burner, collecting dust. And yes, it has been because of the new black media on YouTube and other social mediums and platforms that has spearheaded this discussion to the forefront. Yes, we definitely deserve that credit. So for Sheila Jackson Lee and Rep. John Conyers, with all due respect, you were not the only ones discussing reparations. John Hope Franklin, the historian, and so many others before you and after have discussed and will discuss reparations, because it is the right thing. It's the right thing. When you speak of restorative justice, it's the right thing, and there's no other options. No more shenanigans, in other words. Several 2020 candidates, including Senator Kamala Harris, former Rep. Beto O'Rourke, and Senator Bernie Sanders, said while speaking at the National Action Network event earlier this year that they would sign a bill forming a reparations study commission into law if they became president. Well, none of you will get our votes, because we don't need any studies. We need tangibles. We need results. And now we are so tired of your excuses and your delays. We're tired of that. Our eyes are open and focused on you. Get it right. As Spike Lee would put it in a movie, do the right thing. And of course, Senator Cory Booker has introduced legislation in the Senate that mirrors Jackson Lee's legislation, although it would form a commission and does not call for African Americans to receive payments. We don't need no leaders in the form, in the shape, in the sound, in the intellect, in the mindset of a Cory Booker. We do not want it. You are not wanted. You do not speak for traditional American blacks, for American descendants of slaves. Cory Booker does not. White America, throw him back, because we do not want him. That is not going to fly. Well, Booker's office announced last week that his bill has received 12 co-sponsors, including several 2020 candidates. But the legislation is unlikely to move in the GOP-controlled Senate or in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Quote, I think it's too remote in time. I think it's too divisive. Unquote. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham told reporters earlier this year. Well, once again, as I close this video, I say to you once again, any white man or woman in 2019 having the discussion of reparations, you should at least be smart, intelligent, respectful enough to have black people right there front and center in this discussion. Anything less of that is fully propaganda and shenanigans that black Americans, traditional black Americans, American descendants of slaves, are simply not going for any longer. Put that on your paper. KSOL Black Talk Radio, #reparations now. Peace.